Good morning. Welcome to the King's Report for February 7th, 2018, the 8th year of Chungi, 12th month, and the 22nd day by the heavenly calendar. I'm Tim Elder, here in with Kyle Toffee for the second king of Chungi, Hyung Moon. Good morning, Kyle.
Good morning, Tim.
Let's go first to the weather. We're going to have some snow today. It has not started snowing at the moment, but we are expecting it to start snowing very soon. Actually, according to AccuWeather.com, it should start snowing in the Cheongung area in about 45 minutes. 23 degrees right now, mostly cloudy, and snow and ice expected 2 to 4 inches during the daytime and 3 to 6 inches overall into the evening. Then the snow will be clearing tonight, late tonight, and then tomorrow we'll have a cloudy with a little bit of sunshine. So going up to 34 degrees today, 16 degrees will be the low tonight, and then a high of 29 tomorrow. If you look at the radar, you can see those clouds coming in. Zoom, boom, boom, boom. They're closing in. They're closing in. They're closing in from the west. So the king will not be doing a Korean service at the church today, but instead he'll be doing it at the palace, as we understand. That was the decision last night, unless there's been an update that I'm not aware of, but I think that's probably going to be the case. Let's go directly to some of the headlines, and we'll do the REMA a little bit later. I want to look at the headlines on Breitbart this morning. A Grassley Graham memo. A dossier author Christopher Steele lied to FBI, and the FBI didn't tell the FISA court. So this whole thing of the memo that was written by the House Intelligence Committee Republican staff and then released to the public several days ago now is still reverberating. And even though the stock market's going up and down, I think this is far more important than that. Stock markets go up, they go down, and that's not unusual. But this is unusual. Really, after the Watergate situation, this, as I reported some time ago, this whole FISA, this Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and the court that was created by it, the secret court that was created by it, came after Watergate in 1978. Proposed, by the way, in a bill that was sponsored, by the way, chief sponsored by Ted Kennedy. Mm-hmm. So it's the left that created this this secret court, this secret court thing. Not surprising at all. And then that act was then revised after 9/11 in 2001, so that now we have. So the idea behind this was to make sure that the FBI and CIA and other intelligence agencies were not going to be used for political purposes. That was the idea behind this, because that's what Richard Nixon had done when he was president, and that was finally led to his resignation. And if he had not resigned, he may have been impeached. But now that very FISA court system we see is being used for political purposes. And so the whole purpose of the FISA Act, the whole motivation behind that, has been sort of turned on its head, turned upside down. And that's what we see. So even some Republican establishment figures are poo-pooing this. One man called it a fart in a hurricane. But that's because they are so accustomed to this that this is their normal thing. This is normal for them. So what's the big deal? This is what we always do, that kind of a thing. But to us, it is a big deal. Yeah, to us,
absolutely, it's a huge deal. You know, the problem is, you know, we have to keep control of the government,
yes,
and make sure that they are not overstepping their bounds. Yes. And it looks like, obviously, bounds have been broken, and trust has been broken, and you know, we do need to look at the FBI and the Department of Justice to see whether those people, especially in the higher ranks, are violating the trusts that have been placed in them, and that is a serious crime.
Now, in the process of getting into the bottom of this, it's possible that some of our intelligence capabilities will be compromised. Maybe some methods and sources, so forth, will be compromised. But I think at this point, that's a cost that we have to pay. That's the price that we have to pay to get this thing back on track, because we cannot have this thing going on as it is now. That is really antithetical to the fundamentals of the American system, and also to the fundamentals of what God wants this country to be like. If you look at the Cheonryu Constitution, in the Cheonryu Constitution, first of all, the FBI would not exist under the Cheonryu Constitution. That's number one. You cannot have a nationwide investigative agency that investigates that has a jurisdiction over all the people. The Inspector General that is established under the authority of the King has a jurisdiction only on government employees and people who have contracts with the government. Does not have jurisdiction over people like you and me. Do you have a contract with the government?
Not currently. Okay,
so it does not have jurisdiction over you and me. Okay. So that is one thing. And so the FBI wouldn't be there. And then the King has the power to declassify any document that he wishes. Actually, the president also has that ability. And so the president has the ability to declassify the intelligence that was summarized in the 4-page Republican memo.
Yeah. I think that what's making the people nervous is that there's all this surveillance going on, and we don't know what's happening with our data.
Right.
Whether we're online or sending emails or just talking on our phone. I think the American people are beginning to understand that they are being surveilled, whether they have done anything wrong or not. Is this the purpose for which we have a government? I don't think so.
No.
And I think we're bringing up very good issues. And I hope that Trump and those that are investigating this at this time have the fortitude to keep going forward. Because it's not just the government, it's large corporations like Google that are amassing all this kind of data on us, and the government has access to that too. So where does this begin and where does it end? I think needs to be examined. And but the specifics of this Christopher Steele document is hugely important, because the FISA court accepted as a legitimate reason to spy on Trump's campaign, and this is a violation of even the basic thought of what the FISA court was supposed to be about.
That's right. This is exactly what FISA was supposed to avoid, to prevent.
Right.
Yes. Now, the Democrats have also written their memo, and that was passed unanimously by the House Intelligence Committee. And now that is at the White House, and the White House is reviewing a memo written by Democratic lawmakers on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence regarding the Russia investigation, and to determine whether to make it public. And I think we're expected to hear something about that on Thursday, in other words, by tomorrow-ish or so. But, we don't see, let's see, we'll see what it says, we'll see what that says when it comes out. The Democrats' memo is largely seen as a rebuttal to last week's document, furthering the partisan divide on the House Intelligence Committee. The committee unanimously voted to release the Democrats' rebuttal, but expect heavy scrutiny of it from some Republicans. Representative Tom Rooney, Republican Florida, has already said the memo is not accurate for a million different reasons. Politico reported the Democrats' memo has been shared with the FBI and Justice Department, something Republicans did not do before releasing their document, Schiff said, according to Politico. So we'll see what is in that memo when it comes out. And I read one place that they purposely put a lot of sources and methods information in there to make it more difficult for President Trump to release it. But as I said, that I think that's the cost they have to pay. And we have to, we're in a process right now, kind of like when a company is downsizing, right? When things are not going well and you have to downsize and sort of down to a size where you can start again and build back up. I think that's what's happening right now to the FBI and to the other intelligence agencies. They've gotten out of hand. So they need to be downsized. And there's going to be a lot of painful cutting, and they won't be able to do the job that they used to, and that will put the national security at risk to some extent. But still, I think it is necessary. We cannot use national security as a excuse for turning the United States into a police state.
Well, I think one of the issues that we see is that bureaucracy, by its very nature, wants to grow or does grow.
Yes.
I mean, even I see it at the local school boards, and some of the school administrations become so big, way beyond what they used to be, and that's one of the rising costs. But I think also within bureaus like the FBI, there's so many layers now of bureaucracy that it's not really the rank and file of those agents that are out there doing the work, but really the politics that goes on within bureaucracy, just by its very nature, and that I think can be cut down. I mean, you talk about downsizing. A lot of times when downsizing happens, it is, the managers, that get cut because mid-level bureaucrats, are there, and they are, when times are good, they get hired, and when times get bad, then, they're laid off, and it's usually tough for them because they don't have any real skills. I'm a mid-level bureaucrat, and you put that on your resume, and you're not going to get another job very easily.
But we came very close to having a secret police in the United States. Certainly, if Clinton had been elected president, then we would be living in a society with a police state, with a secret police today. You think of a secret police as something that exists in Nazi Germany or in the Soviet Union or in North Korea or China. But we came very, very close to having a secret police. In fact, maybe we do have a secret police. Maybe it's secret. But this has been exposed, and it needs to be cut off. And so, yes, let the Democrats have their say. And I would encourage President Trump to go on a declassifying binge. Anything that he sees that ought to be declassified, go ahead and do it. And we need to do that in order so that we can see what kind of a country we're actually living in, and so that we can decide where we want to go with this.
I think that really should be expanded to so many of the different investigations that have been going on in the past. I mean, looking at Hillary's emails and things like that, we need to know why, although Hillary Clinton was being accused of things that a normal person would be thrown in jail for, having worked for the U.S. government and the Army, I know what regulations are required for keeping, for example, servers secure. Although I was working more on the more morale, welfare, and recreations of the United States government, I was working on basically a hotel kind of environment. But our computers had to be locked down the same way that missile silos computers had to be locked down. I did get dinged on the fact that I didn't have 24-hour cameras focused on the physical servers. But the kind of things that are required when we have servers in the government, the retention of emails and all these things are constantly enforced. And I would have been in big trouble if I hadn't been enforcing those things. Keeping emails for at least 3-5 years, that kind of thing. So missing emails is an amazing thing, and we get a normal person thrown in jail.
Let's see. Well, let's go to another story that the White House is confirming a report that President Trump is interested in a military parade to celebrate the armed forces.
July 4th.
July 4th, do you think? Actually, the most recent one was in 1991, I think, celebrating the end of the Iraq War. Except we're still there, aren't we?
That's right.
But that was not July 4th. It was called a National Victory Day. But President Trump is incredibly supportive of America's great service members who risk their lives every day to keep our country safe. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders said in a statement to reporters, he has asked the Department of Defense to explore a celebration at which all Americans can show their appreciation. The Washington Post first broke the news, citing a military official who said that the president gave, quote, marching orders, unquote, to military officials to come up with ideas similar to the military parade in France for Bastille Day. Trump attended the French parade in July 2017. The president was impressed by the show of military prowess, referring to the spectacle during his meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron in New York in September. It was one of the greatest parades I've ever seen, Trump marveled at the time, adding, because of what I witnessed, we may do something like that on July 4th in Washington, down Pennsylvania Avenue. I don't know. We're going to have to try and top it, he said. So it's really great. I think recent presidents have steered away from that. They've sort of been embarrassed by America's military might and strength. But it's important that America do this for several reasons. One, as President Trump said, to express appreciation to our military, but also our adversaries need to know that we love our military, that the military holds an honored position in our society, and that members of the military are respected, so that gives us an image of strength overseas, which is necessary because it is the American strength that keeps the world safe.
I think it's also very important because it honors not only the people that are serving, but those that have served, and also would make the military a better, a more interesting alternative, to the young people,
right?
And make it attractive, seeing how our government and our people honor the military. It's a great option for people to go through 2-4 years or more and make it a career in the military. So I think all around it's a wonderful idea.
That's a good point. Yes. Let's see a couple other headlines here just before we go to break. Washington Post on immigration: celebrate demographic change, ignore economic impact. Yeah, that's the left. That's the left for you. They don't care about the economic impact. They just want to repopulate the country. DOJ files felony charges against alien arrested for DUI homicide of NFL player. Schiff falls for Russian prankster spoof promising compromising dirt on President Trump. Those are always fun stories to have. World's most persistent illegal alien deported 44 times. How come he keeps getting caught is my question. What does he do that he's been caught 44 times?
Actually, that's probably a very good question. What has he done? And why is he running around after being caught?
Anyway, booming foreign-born population giving electoral dominance to Democrats. Of course, we know that, and that's what they wanted. Let's go into that story on the world's most persistent illegal alien, shall we? Just see what's up with that. 44 times over a period of 15 years, according to a new report, with data obtained by the Immigration and Custom Enforcement Agency. The Washington Times' Stephen Deenan reported how an illegal alien from Mexico has been deported from the U.S. more than any other illegal alien in the country. The second the second most deported illegal alien, according to Deenan's analysis, is a foreign national who has been removed from the U.S. a total of 40 times between 2001 and 2015. Others on the list of most deported illegal aliens include foreign nationals who were removed from the country between 31 and 35 times. Deenan reported in the Washington Times, ICE provided the information about the 5 most deported illegal immigrants to the Times on the condition that it not name them specifically. All 5 were Mexican, and among them they had amassed 14 criminal convictions for illegal entry, 7 for illegal reentry, 3 for vehicle theft, and 1 count of cruelty toward wife. In fiscal 2017, I think they also count the times when they get caught coming in. Yeah, so that also counts as a deportation. So I think that's why these guys keep trying to keep coming back.
We need a wall.
We need a wall, yes, don't we? Yes, we need a wall. All right, so that's interesting. Let's see. California rapid responders leveraging white privilege to protect illegals from ICE. Angel family member, they're breaking the law and we're supposed to feel sorry for them. The report, Los Angeles Times and San Diego Union Tribune up for sale. House passes short-term spending bill funding government through March 23rd. Why don't we have a budget? Cartel gunmen murdered 2 Catholic priests in southern Mexico. Trade deficit highest level since 2008. Polls Americans increasingly support tariffs. Biden, the president, has some difficulty with precision. According to Biden, people seeking treatment for flu-like symptoms highest since 2009 pandemic. And Democratic Representative Spear, Trump is truly Napoleon-like. We have a Napoleon in the making here. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders on Jeff Flake. His numbers are in the tank. Biden says Trump is a joke, doing everything Putin ever wanted. Al Sharpton, Trump has proposed some of the most racist, bigoted policies. Meanwhile, the economy keeps chugging along.
It does, yeah.
It's a tide that's lifting all boats, but they don't want that. They don't want people getting rich.
Actually, it seems that the left cheers when the economy goes down.
Yes, they do. Obama kept it below 3%. On an annual rate every year of every one of his 8 years.
When the economy was going great in the past year, they all said it was a leftover of Obama's policies that are making
That's right. He tamped it down during his administration so that his successor would have all the credit. That's what he did.
But then there's a blip in the stock market, and they're blaming Trump right away. So they speak out of both sides of their mouth all the time.
Yes. Trump digs in, shut down government if Congress won't close immigration loopholes. Killers allowed to come into our country. ICE union unable to support White House plan. Lacks pro-American reforms. Police crack down on Islamophobic tweets. Not FGM. That's a female genital mutilation. Revealed British government promotes wearing hijab, provides free scarves. There's a poster here for World Hijab Day, international event on 1 February.
Are you going to wear one?
Well, this has already passed, so
that's right.
I'm free. I don't know, but I'll have to decide next year. Ofsted boss who backed infant hijab ban faces anti-Semitic attacks. Former Silicon Valley employees form organization against tech companies. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back with our REMA after this.
we kind of like lost the sense of like why we were doing this, like why we were going through it, this, and kind of felt rushed because we only knew each other for about 2 months actually.
Only 1 month.
1 month? Yeah. Okay, 1 month before the matching ceremony we had. And so yeah, we started having a hard time. And so like for me, like, you know, you get kind of fooled by Hollywood, and I think that's where my biggest trouble was because I didn't know how to be an actual good husband at that time and how to like really work with a woman before it. So Hyun really gave me clear direction. Basically, you know, he just said like, you know, you have to be strong, you have to be, you know, confident in yourself and not be so worried about yourself. You have to be confident in who you are, kind of thing.
The more I had to wait, the more attacking was getting much more intense, and I was really struggling at the time. So, you know, and you know, I could feel Satan was just trying to attack me, playing with my emotions, making me really complicated and confused. And it got to the point where it turned me very negative about the blessing. So, and that time I knew the way to overcome this situation was, you know, just holding on to God and His words, because I don't think I'll be ever to overcome this situation alone. You know, that time I really felt I really need God by my side. So I started doing conditions, prayer and Rima. And doing that, through that, I really realized, you know, God was really straightforward to me and just, you know, sending these messages to me, you know, telling me to be thankful. I realized, you know, God really wanted this blessing to happen.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Wednesday, February 7th, 2018. Tim Elder and Kyle Toffee, and for the second king of Hyung Moon. I'd like to go to our Rimas this morning. My first Rima is in the book of Corinthians, the second book of Corinthians, chapter 9, verse 9 and 10. As it is written, He hath dispersed abroad, He hath given to the poor, His righteousness remaineth forever. Now He hath ministereth a seed to the sower, both minister bread for your food, and multiply your seed sown, and increase the fruits of your righteousness. Here, Paul he starts verse 9, as it is written, and when the New Testament does that, it means it is referring to something in the Old Testament, and to referring to something in the Jewish scriptures. And in this case, we can do a little search and find that he's actually referring to Psalm 112. And I'd like to read that, because here he's reminding people, when people would read that, they would say, oh yeah, okay, we saw that. That was in Psalm 112, or if that was the same number. And then they would remind themselves of that whole psalm. And so basically he's sort of incorporating that psalm into his letter to the Corinthians. So I'd like to read Psalm 112. Praise ye the Lord, blessed is the man that feareth the Lord, that delighteth greatly in his commandments. His seed shall be mighty upon earth, the generation of the upright shall be blessed. Wealth and riches shall be in his house, and his righteousness endureth forever. Unto the upright there ariseth light in the darkness. He is gracious and full of compassion and righteous. A good man showeth favor and lendeth. He will guide his affairs with discretion. Surely he will not be moved forever. The righteous shall be in everlasting remembrance. He shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. His heart is established. He shall not be afraid until he see his desire upon his enemies. He hath dispersed, he hath given to the poor. His righteousness endureth forever. His horn shall be exalted with honor. The wicked shall see it and be grieved. He shall gnash with his teeth and melt away, till the desire of the wicked shall perish. So here, verse 9 here is the one that Paul is incorporating into the Corinthians. But he hath dispersed, he hath given to the poor, his righteousness endureth forever. His horn shall be exalted with honor. But in incorporating verse 9, he's actually incorporating the entire Psalm 112 in his message to the Corinthians. And this is a psalm about hope. It's a psalm about if we are righteous, if we have our relationship with Christ, then there's nothing that we need to fear, and that we will prosper because God made us to prosper. Not that God gives us any special favors, but because God created us in a way that we are to prosper on this earth. And it says here, especially in verse 7, he shall not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is fixed, trusting in the Lord. So that's really, in these, as we go through the judgment period and as the judgment becomes increasingly severe over the next months and years, we will have many evil tidings, but we can trust in the Lord. Yes.
Yeah, it's really important that we hold on to our relationship with God and know that God is with us, and that if we maintain our faith, maintain our hope, maintain the concept that God really is with us and is guiding us, is protecting us, even if bad things do happen to us personally, that we can have hope that God's kingdom will come and is coming, and that our life is not in vain. So it gives us great courage.
I heard recently from one of our contacts that the Family Federation, or some people in the Family Federation, are determined that this will be the year when they eradicate the sanctuary church.
Good luck.
Good luck, yes, because so there may be there are some things that they could do to us externally. That is true, and they could make a life unpleasant for us for a short time. But this psalm tells us that as long as our relationship with Christ is strong, then there is nothing to fear. There is nothing for us to fear. By the way, who is Christ?
Who is Christ? Jesus.
True Father is Christ.
Jesus and True Father.
Yes. People get mixed up about that. When we talk about Christ, people think that we only talk about Jesus. But Christ is actually just it's nothing other than the word Christ is nothing more than the Greek word for Messiah.
That's right.
The Hebrew word Messiah, translated into Greek, is Christ or Christos. So when we say that Father is Christ, this is nothing new. It's simply another way of saying that he is Messiah. But people, when I talk about relationship with Christ, they say, "Oh, you're talking about Jesus." Of course, Jesus, but also Father, because Father and Jesus are one. The Word became flesh 2,000 years ago, and that was Jesus. And the Word became flesh a second time in 1920, and that was True Father. That was the second coming of Jesus. That is how Jesus came again. So Father is the second coming of Jesus. He is the second coming of Christ. He is the third Adam, because in Adam's case too, the Word became flesh. But now, as we go forward in our relationship with Christ, we have nothing to fear.
I think also, we've reached a new time, a new point in history where truly, if Satan and evil try to destroy good, actually evil ends up getting hurt and will diminish.
Yes.
And God's side will become stronger. And I think that is the turning point that we have reached. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll see that within the sanctuary movement. If people try to stop us, actually they will get destroyed. So,
well, we'll see. I don't know if they will. I don't know if that was just a few people or just somebody making some kind of a bravado comment or something like that. But it is always possible, and we need to. But it is an opportunity for us to remind ourselves that no matter what may happen. We just have to hold fast to Christ and his righteousness, and there's nothing to worry about. All right, let's go to our Cheonsongyong Rima, which is in the book on the root of the universe, chapter 2. And this is the section on, anyway, it's the page number is 1753. Father speaking in 1985, the male and female organs are the poles, plus and minus, that can possess God's love. They are the charging plates of a battery. Without them, we could not be charged up with God's love. Since human beings refill their love through that organ, they can do so daily. Animals, however, cannot. They can only do it yearly. Daily.
Daily.
Yes.
Well, I know it's a problem here in the Pennsylvania area where the deer do it yearly and start running through the streets. And become a hazard for cars. You know, they go running, and it's only once a year.
Well, but human beings can do it daily.
That's it. We should be running through the streets every day.
I don't think he's talking about running through the streets.
Oh, okay.
No, he's talking about charging. He's talking about using the charging plates of our battery, that is, say, the male and female organs, to charge ourselves up with God's love. Daily. At our age, that might be not so much daily, but actually, the second king, our king, spoke how he has, of course, interviewed and counseled many blessed couples over the years since beginning his ministry. First beginning in Korea and then now in Pennsylvania. And he has discovered that in more cases than you would think, blessed families are just not having sex at all. They're not, bringing their charging plates together. So Father says, well, animals can only do it yearly. Aren't we lucky that we're human beings? We can do it daily. But some blessed families are not even doing it yearly. They go, they go quite a long time without having sexual relations between husband and wife. But really, sex is an important part of a marriage. And if you have a marriage where there is no sex, what is that? It may be that that relationship might be more of a sort of a roommate relationship. Yeah. Especially if the husband and wife are using different bedrooms. That's certainly a very tragic situation. That's not what God wanted at all. So I think God is reminding us this morning to charge up. Charge up.
So maybe better than a fasting and prayer condition would be a 21-day sex condition.
If you wish.
And if you can do it.
If you wish, yes. Anyway, these days we have the marriage of the age in the form of different chemical substances that we can take to help us perhaps fulfill such a condition. I don't know. But yes, God wants us to, God made us so that we could charge up daily.
Aju.
Hallelujah. Amen. All right, so those are Rimas for today. Let's take another break and we'll come back with more news from a Chonic perspective.
There was a lot of things I really liked about Diella from the very beginning. I loved her passion, the way she sang to the church, the loyalty she had to her parents, and I really wanted somebody who's loyal to True Father, and I knew if she's loyal to her parents, that's a good sign. And the one memory I really have that really helped me like really decide I really want to get blessed to her was she said that I'd always be second, and she'd always put God before me. And I knew if she was willing to put God before me, I could like fully trust her, and that was something that really moved me to, like, I knew at that point, like, I wanted to get blessed to her.
Okay, so at first when we met, we completely put each other in boxes, the famous box, and I don't know, I was praying and praying and praying, and I was just not sure in the beginning. We both weren't, and but we just continued talking, and but for some reason it just didn't seem to work because we were just too focused on ourselves, I think. So, but I kept praying and praying, and then one day I was very frustrated, and I even talked with my mom, and she told me, you know what, Diella, I can see he really loves God. And if he loves God, he can fully love you. And I think that's what I needed to hear, and from that moment on, everything changed.
Welcome back to the King's Report for February 7th, 2018. Tim Elder and Kyle Toffee in for the second King of Chinook, Hyung Jin Moon, this morning. Let's look at a couple of articles about the abortion situation. The immigration situation. I had abortion on my mind because we're going to see a video on abortion in a minute, but before that, let's look at the immigration. Washington Post on immigration: celebrate demographic change, ignore economic impact. The Washington Post editors posted a long article February 6th, which supposedly showed how President Donald Trump's immigration reforms would change the nation's racial demographics, but it completely ignored the immigration's economic impact on Americans. The editor's decision to follow the racial numbers is a repudiation of the journalistic slogan popularized after the Washington Post's Watergate stories, "Follow the money." The article said President Trump's proposal to cut legal immigration rates would delay the date that white Americans become a minority of the population by as few as 1 or as many as 5 additional years, according to an analysis by the Washington Post. The Census Bureau projects that minority groups will outnumber non-Hispanic whites in the United States in 2044. The Post analysis projects that were Trump's plan to be carried out, the date would be between 2045 and 2049, depending on how parts of it are implemented. The reality of the United States non-racist, non-assimilation civic life was buried in a 32nd paragraph. One of the biggest unknowns is how long new immigrants will identify as racial minorities. Some academics, such as Duke professor William Darity Jr., wrote in the American Prospect that many Latino immigrants identify less as Hispanic and more as non-Hispanic white the longer they stay in the United States, a phenomenon similar to the absorption of Irish and Italian immigrants into the idea of whiteness. Simultaneously, the Washington Post ignores the huge impact of mass immigration on Americans' productivity and per capita income. Both were entirely absent from the article, even though they were critical to the 320 million Americans who are deeply impacted by the government's use of cheap labor immigration as a tool to nudge up economic growth and government revenues. Well, of course, we understand why the Washington Post does this, because their narrative is that Donald Trump is racist. Amen. That is the narrative, and you cannot go outside of that narrative. And so everything has to be looked at, reported on through that prism. And so they're trying to say that by delaying the date that whites become a minority, Trump is clearly a racist. That's what they're trying to say. Yep. But what Trump is trying to do is make Americans prosperous.
Right, for everybody.
For everybody. And, this whole thing about race, this was the this was the identity politics that the Democrats put forward in the previous election, and didn't work very well with them. But they are still hanging on to that, and just desperate for that. So even if people all become poor, doesn't matter. Still want to make sure that the race thing is covered. And Ryan, as the House Speaker Ryan, to senators, no amnesty debate in the House unless Trump approves. House Speaker Paul Ryan has dropped a ton of bricks on the Senate Democrats' push for a no-strings amnesty by declaring that he will not allow a House debate on any amnesty and immigration bill unless it is supported by President Donald Trump. We're not going to bring immigration legislation through that the president doesn't support, Ryan told reporters Tuesday. Well, that makes sense because the president would simply veto it, and then they would not be able to overturn that veto in the House. The statement is enough to wreck Democrats' hope of pushing a no-strings amnesty bill past Trump's opposition and through the Senate next week. Many Democratic senators want to challenge Trump, but many others will not put themselves on the record voting for an amnesty that cannot become law, but which will be hung around their necks in the next election campaign. Ryan's statement is also a favor to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who agreed to schedule a floor debate on amnesty for February 8th. He scheduled the debate as the price for quickly ending the Democrats' January filibuster of the government's temporary budget. Ryan said Tuesday, "Let me be very clear about this. We'll take a bill that the president supports. So we could put it this way. President Trump made a very serious and sincere offer of goodwill with the reforms that he sent to the Hill. That is what we should be working off of. Those are the bipartisan negotiations that the majority leader is conducting on our behalf. So we're not going to bring immigration legislation through that the president doesn't support. We're working on something here in the House. We're working on bipartisan negotiations. It is going to be a bill that we support, that the president supports." Ryan's statement still allows Democrats, the liberal Republicans, and media allies to talk up the promises of an amnesty for so-called dreamers, but without a path through the House, Democratic leaders now need to find theatrical alternatives which allow liberal senators to excite the far-left base while also allowing Democrats in Trump states to avoid putting their thumbprints on any amnesty vote. Ryan's statement also suggests that he is willing to see the immigration issue play a large part in the November elections. McConnell has been very tight-lipped about how he will arrange the pending amnesty and immigration debate in the Senate. On Tuesday, he told reporters, "I'm going to structure the floor debate in such a way that's fair for everyone. I can't be specific because there's no secret plan here to try to push this in any direction. The Senate is going to work its will, and I hope that we will end up passing something." However, the Senate rules require a supermajority of 60 votes to get something approved, ensuring that Democrats can block Trump's proposals and Republicans can block Democrats' proposals. "Whoever gets to 60 wins," McConnell said. Democrats were hoping to get support from a bloc of 10 to 15 business-first Republicans led by Maine Senator Susan Collins, who's a Republican. But Ryan's statement means that they likely will lose some of their own senators, and so need to win over roughly 20 Republicans before they can reach the 60-vote threshold. That obstacle likely ensures that few of the 10 to 15 GOP senators will publicly endorse a Democratic plan that Trump opposes. Amnesty politics are difficult for Democrats, partly because their pro-amnesty position is deeply unpopular among voters. In 2014, for example, Senator Chuck Schumer lost 9 seats in the Senate after he spent 2013 trying to pass the huge Gang of 8 amnesty through the Senate and the House. In 2018, 10 Democratic senators faced re-election in states won by Trump in 2016, including Pennsylvania. Bob Casey is up for re-election. He's a senator from Pennsylvania, a Democrat, and Pennsylvania was won by Trump in 2016. The result is that most of the 10 senators wish to avoid any vote on the debate, and Ryan's promise to block any Senate bill will help them persuade their pro-amnesty colleagues to postpone difficult votes until after the November election. In recent statements and speeches, Trump has escalated pressure on Democrats to endorse his 4-part amnesty and immigration framework. This pressure sets the stage for Trump to convert his rhetoric into a 2018 campaign theme. Trump's 2016 immigration policies are very popular among the public, including among blue-collar African Americans who are a core element of the Democrats' current electoral base. In contrast, business groups, Democrats, and the establishment media tout misleading industry-funded Nation of Immigrants polls that pressure Americans to say they welcome immigrants, including the roughly 3 million Dreamer illegals. The alternative, a Priority or Fairness polls, put the 2016 election show that voters in the polling booth put a much higher priority on helping their families, neighbors, and fellow nationals get decent jobs in a high-tech, high-immigration, low-wage economy. All right, so that is the negotiation that is going on between the president and Congress right now on the immigration issue. The Democrats want the borders to be open, as we saw in the Washington Post article. Washington Post also is basically a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, and they're focusing on making changing the demographic makeup of the United States, whereas President Trump is focused on improving the economic situation, the prosperity, improving the prosperity of the United States.
I think, like things on like the economy and especially the immigration issue, the Democrats don't want Trump to have a win. Mm-hmm. I think most Americans look at what Trump offered as logical, fair, and compassionate. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that the Democrats want to have people see mm-hmm. Trump as fair, mm-hmm. compassionate, and so I think they're really going to fight this one. But Trump needs to bring this issue to the people mm-hmm. and make the people put pressure on their senators and congressmen.
Mm-hmm. So as we were looking at Democratic senators up for re-election in Trump states, we need to maybe look at some of what's going on with Bob Casey, who is a Democratic senator from Pennsylvania, and his term is expiring. And so he is up for re-election this year. Just to read some of the headlines regarding him, Bob Casey takes heat from both sides on Senate abortion vote. We covered that article. This was an article about how Casey voted. He voted in favor of limiting abortions to the first 20 weeks. Although he's a Democrat,
right.
So he took heat from the Democrats. But he also took heat from the Republicans because this is different from his past, his past, and so Republicans are saying we can't trust him and so forth. And then Vice President Pence and Senator Bob Casey used Pittsburgh as stage to trade political barbs. Republican Lou Barletta raised his paltry $500,000 for Senate bid versus Bob Casey. Lou Barletta is the presumed, looks like a Republican candidate against Bob Casey, so it's not looking too good right now. I mean, the prospects of defeating Bob Casey and putting a Republican in his place. Let's read this, a Washington Examiner story right now. Let's see here. Republican Lou Barletta raised just under $500,000 for his race against incumbent Senator Bob Casey during the final 3 months of 2017, an amount concerning to Pennsylvania Republicans who worry the party is blowing an opportunity to oust a vulnerable Democrat. Barletta, personally recruited to run by President Trump, spent nearly as much as he raised during the fourth fundraising quarter to close the year with just under $1.1 million in the bank, far less than Casey's $8.6 million. And, this is it. This is money in politics. This is why the new Constitution seeks to get rid of, or to, I would say, vastly diminish the role of money in politics. And in the case of the Senate, it does that by going back to the original plan of the U.S. Constitution, which was to have senators chosen by the state legislatures. Here we have a situation where we want to get rid of Casey, but I don't know. If money talks, then it's going to be difficult. That could prove decisive in an election cycle shaping up as a backlash against Trump, even though he defeated Democrat Hillary Clinton in Pennsylvania in 2016 and become the first Republican in decades becoming the first Republican in decades to win the state's electoral votes. Barletta described his fundraising as making good progress after declaring for the race at the end of August. Our campaign has built great momentum heading into 2018, the congressman said in a statement. The response we have received in a short time has been inspiring. We are well positioned to take our message directly to the voters of Pennsylvania and defeat Bob Casey in November. Barletta faces minor opposition in the Republican primary. With Trump's endorsement, the state party establishment is lining up behind him, although there are pockets of resistance. Well, not sure on what basis President Trump chose him. We'll have to look into that a little bit more, but I think people are saying, okay, well, it was he's President Trump's personal choice. All right, well then I guess he's the Republican candidate. I don't know. It doesn't feel too good. Doesn't feel too good right now. Anyway, a few other headlines on Casey. Bob Casey votes yes as Senate approves short-term funding to end federal shutdown. Let's see, wake-up call, a look at the political dominoes of redistricting. Pennsylvania's Casey exposes Trump's written plan to dismantle ACA. Senator Casey urges Congress to fully fund community health centers. Casey releases a Trump administration memo on efforts to gut Obamacare. Senator Casey asks Amtrak to investigate possible illegal imported steel used for Mount Joy project, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So right now, it's not. I don't like it. Not looking too good. All right. Did the tech team find that video? Okay. Let's play this very disturbing video on Infowars. Is child flesh used for enhancement pills? Can we also show that on the screen?
According to reports by Associated Press, since last August, the
that was from 2002.
35 smuggling attempts from China in South Korea.
2012,
Reports
thank you.
indicated
Sorry.
that there was an established business network between the two countries to fulfill this high demand. A Korean investigative team acquired these capsules and ran DNA tests on it. The test results reported that the pills were 99.7% human. Tests also found hair and nail remnants in the pills. Currently, the customs have narrowed down the origins of the pills to 4 cities in China.
The globalists are losing, but they're doubling down their attacks. There's one thing they fear, and it's people power. Infowars has defeated their censorship so far only because of you spreading the links, spreading the articles, subscribing, clicking the notification buttons, and getting the articles and videos out. But they are intensifying their censorship, so now it's more important than ever to ensure we keep the First Amendment alive and well right here in America and free speech worldwide. So from Australia to countries in Africa, to Europe, to Mexico, to right here in the USA, I salute you all for taking action and defending free speech. We will prevail.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
So I'm watching footage of First Lady Melania Trump visiting the Children's Hospital in Cincinnati. It's just so refreshing to make the First Lady a lady again. You know, Melania Trump is so classy and so graceful. It's so diametrically opposed to what we had with Michelle Obama, who was, and I'm about to make these words up, but I think they're going to stick. Michelle Obama was a clumpy and thuddish First Lady. Clumpy and thuddish. Write that down in your notebook, students. Michael Obama was clumpy and thuddish.
Okay, I think that's the end of that news about the DNA. There's a little bit of an accented English, so let me read this. Read the transcript. Powdered human baby flesh marketed as an aphrodisiac is still being smuggled from China to South Korea. The abominable contraband is reportedly in high demand in both countries. Moreover, customs officials narrowed down the pills to sources to 4 cities in China. The investigative team acquired these capsules and ran DNA tests on it, said an International Business Times reporter when the practice first appeared in 2012. The test results reported that the pills were 99.7% human. Tests also found hair and nail remnants in the pills. Cases like this illustrate the urgency to shut down abortion clinics due to the fact they operate as merchants for exporting baby remains, and the resulting black market incentives further murders of the unborn. So these are pills that were smuggled from China into South Korea as aphrodisiacs. So it doesn't say whether they are available in the United States or not. I would suspect they are because, aphrodisiacs tend to become popular. About the charging every day stuff?
Sure. This is not recommended.
People want to charge up every day. And so these aphrodisiacs if something works, they tend to become very popular very quickly, and they tend to be moved from country to country by human hand. So if they work, I would very much suspect that they are available in the United States if you know where to look for them.
I think there's also a placebo effect on these things. I mean, people hear that this is the latest and greatest, and they'll try it. But I was wondering, they say powdered human baby flesh. Who's to say that it's actually the baby flesh? DNA, I don't think will necessarily prove that it was a baby.
Well, where are they getting the baby? Where are they getting the human flesh from?
We're talking about China here, so we don't know.
Abortions would be probably the easiest place to get it from.
Probably.
The most available. And of course, they could, execute people and get it from them, but from dead bodies. But I think it seems to me logical to suspect that they are getting most of their flesh from aborted babies.
That is sad.
Yes. So that proves reminds us of two things. One is the barbarity of Chinese communism, a communist society, and any society under communism, under socialism. And the other, of course, is the barbarity of abortion, of the practice of abortion itself. And that this is I think we can assume that it is related to that. But certainly the barbarity. Wasn't mad cow disease caused by cows eating cows?
Yes. Cow brains.
So, my goodness.
Really?
Let's go through some of the headlines on Drudge. That's the kind of world that we're going to be living in if China becomes the preeminent superpower. Drudge is still following the stock market. Yesterday it was up 500 points. I don't really think we need to do that because those things go up and down. And it's well within correction territory. So it's not, the absolute numbers are quote historic, but the absolute numbers give the headline writer something to write about. What is it? 1,600 points. Never happened before in history. But in the stock market, you're always dealing with percentages.
Right.
Absolute numbers really don't mean all that much. It's the percentages that mean things, and it's still well within correction territory. And actually, apparently, it's not an official correction until the Dow closes 10% down, and it hasn't done that yet.
No.
It was only down 8.5% on Monday. So anyway, I don't know what's going to happen today, but in any case, even if things go bad for the stock traders, it's still pretty good because the economy is humming along pretty well right now.
It is.
As they say, the fundamentals are good, and they are. Employment is down. The GDP growth is up, and the number of people relying on food stamps is down. So I don't see really anything to get too excited about in terms of the stock market. Homeland tackles deep state. Goldman, cryptocurrencies to hit zero. I think they hope that, because cryptocurrencies they hope that they hit zero. And maybe some will. Maybe Bitcoin will hit zero. Just as, remember MySpace?
Oh, yeah.
I remember the first time I heard my daughter had a MySpace page, and I tried to figure it out and everything like that. What is this? I mean, it seemed like nothing. And sure enough, I guess enough people felt that way as well. And so MySpace disappeared. And in place of it, we got Facebook, so things come and go, especially in the infancy of a certain technology.
Right.
The first companies that began producing cars, they're not around today. But GM and Ford, who came after them, are around today. Right. So it's the guys that follow up, who learn from the mistakes of the original pioneers that really make the lasting products and the lasting effect. But I think cryptocurrencies as a group are here to stay, and it's very interesting to me because I think they're going to make central banks irrelevant. I think that's what's going to happen. And that's why Goldman, which is part of the establishment, and central banks are trying desperately to regulate this stuff.
That's true. And I think the reason it's been popular is that it's not regulated.
Yes.
So you got cross purposes there.
Yes.
But I think there's also a nervousness. These systems, as we see, are hackable. Mm-hmm. And
as North Koreans have found out, yes.
And we don't know. You have your money into something that is out there in the web. It's there one day, and the next day it may not be there. So
yes,
it's a gamble.
There's still problems with it. That's true, but it's still in its infancy. It's really in its infancy. Herbal supplement contains opioids, regulators say. Now here's an opioid that is, or a supplement, I'm sorry, that is available in the United States. And so the FDA tested it, and they say that it's based on how do you pronounce this? Kratom?
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they say that the chemicals in it act in the same or similar way as heroin and other opioids. And they say that there have been a certain number of deaths from this. Identified 44 reports of death involving kratom since 2011, up from 36 reported in November. And so they're getting close to banning it, and actually already when people bring it in, this is being confiscated at airports when people try to bring it into the United States. Well, I think I see the hand of big pharma behind this. As one of the comments down here says, when is the government going to stop trying to regulate what we put into our bodies? As if, okay, so if there were 44 deaths since 2011, then, all right, tell people about that, but give people a choice. This is apparently a pain killer or pain treatment drug. It gained popularity in the United States as a treatment for pain, anxiety, and drug dependence. Proponents argue that the substance is safer than opioid killers like OxyContin and Vicodin, which are on the market and FDA approved, which have contributed to the epidemic of drug abuse. More than 63,000 Americans died in 2016 from drug overdoses, mostly from opioids. But they're worried about a drug that caused 44 deaths. They're going to ban that. But they're going to keep OxyContin on the market. They're going to keep Vicodin on the market. But they're going to ban a drug that caused 44. I think it's pretty clearly that this is big pharma behind this. Not that I recommend this drug. This is the first time I've heard of it. But I just think that people ought to be able to make up their own minds without FDA, without the government telling us what we can and cannot put into our bodies. FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb reiterated that there are no FDA-approved medical uses for kratom, which is derived from a plant native to Southeast Asia. That's
where the FDA should end their announcement. Not that they're going to ban it, but that that it's not FDA approved. Okay, then people can make their own decision. Yes. Whether they use it or not.
So it's actually up to the Drug Enforcement Agency to decide whether or not to ban it. And the FDA has submitted its review to the DEA, and the DEA is considering whether to place kratom in the same category of illegal drugs as heroin and LSD. The agency was poised to take that step in the summer of 2016, but delayed a decision after a flood of public complaints, including a letter signed by 62 members of Congress and a protest at the White House by kratom supporters. There's no time frame for DEA's final decision. So it's a controversy, and there are a lot of people who was just saying, hey, if it works for me, why not let me do it? Why not let me use this? So that again, the nanny state don't want anybody to do anything that might be dangerous. Do not want that at all,
unless they make money at it.
Yes. A man tells undocumented to stop urinating at bus stop and then gets stabbed. This looks like a self-defense situation. WJLA, Washington, D.C. And let's see what they say about this. Wheaton, Maryland is where this happened. An undocumented immigrant urinating in public used a box cutter to repeatedly stab a man who merely suggested he pull up his trousers and use a proper restroom, police say. On November 30th, around 11 p.m., this is quite some time ago, Montgomery County Police were dispatched to the Wheaton Metro bus turnaround along Georgia Avenue. Upon stepping out of their cruisers, officers saw a man with stab wounds and bloody slashes to his neck, face, and stomach. Ooh. The victim plus an uninjured eyewitness pointed officers towards Salvador Gomez Lopez, 46, who was allegedly drunk and belligerent. The two men explained that Gomez Lopez was relieving himself in plain view of fellow bus passengers. When the victim questioned his actions, Gomez Lopez reportedly reached into his backpack and grabbed hold of a razor-sharp box cutter. What followed was a physical tussle, and he was illegally in the United States. ICE has since lodged an immigration detainer. According to court findings, Gomez Lopez has 2 children and worked part-time doing odd jobs for relatives. But it doesn't say anything about the ability for that man to defend himself. That's unfortunate. This is in Maryland, so I think in Maryland it's possible to have firearms. To be carrying firearms, I think, but although there are strict laws against it, I wish that reporter had covered more of that aspect of the story there. Father loses fingers from flu complications. Watch out for the flu this year. Woman found holding her eyeball outside church. Yuck. That must have been a shock. A man took dismembered body and suitcase on train. A blackout hits Caracas, Venezuela. And, of course, the LA Times owner to sell the paper and the death of American newspapers. That's been going on for many, many years. Denmark to ban Islamic veils. Oh, I thought Europe was tolerant.
Very tolerant.
I thought, well, that sounds racist to me.
Does to me. I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. What's going on there? I guess their liberalism has come to its limitations. Borneo orangutan found riddled with gunshots in latest attack. Let's see, what else looks interesting here? Facebook Sandberg says Me Too movement hasn't gone far enough. Tarantino facing more backlash. Tom Ford loathing red carpet politics, now acceptable to not show respect to people who don't share your views. Red carpet politics. That's a good phrase. Yeah, Hollywooders think that they represent the people, that they were elected by the people. Russian pranksters spoof Schiff. This is a good story for a little bit of comic entertainment in the morning. Adam Schiff, of course, is the head Democrat, that is the senior Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee in the United States, and he's very, very anti-Trump. And well, let's see what happened. Adam Schiff sent his staff to try and collect classified materials for the FBI after Russian pranksters told him Putin has naked blackmail pictures of Trump. Adam Schiff, so So he was fooled by this group of Russians. The ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee was the victim of a prank phone call by Russian comedians who offered to give him compromising dirt on Donald Trump, including nude photos of the president and a Russian reality show star. DailyMail.com can disclose that after the prank, his staff engaged in correspondence with what they thought was a Ukrainian politician to try to obtain the classified material promised on the call. On an audio recording of the prank call posted online, Adam Schiff can be heard discussing the committee's Russia investigation and increasingly bizarre allegations about Trump with a man who claimed to be Andriy Pruby, the chairman of the Ukrainian parliament. The call made a year ago was actually from two Russian comedians nicknamed Vovan and Lexus, who have become notorious for their phony calls to high-ranking American officials and celebrities, including UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and Elton John. Its existence was first reported by The Atlantic, but now how a staff member working for the minority on the House Intelligence Committee pursued the information after the call. And the Schiff's office said the congressman suspected the call was bogus from the beginning and reported it to authorities afterward. Of course, now he says that.
That's right.
But in a recording of the 8-minute conversation, Schiff appeared to take the call seriously, or at least played along convincingly, and emails from the Democrats' staff to the fake politician afterwards said he had found it productive. Oh boy! So the Democrats are so desperate to get Trump that they fell into their own trap. So anyway, it's an interesting little tidbit there. What's going on with Amtrak? Yeah, crashes spark concerns.
That is a concern. Well, we had a new one just the other night.
Yeah.
Separation of a train.
It broke apart. At 125 miles an hour.
Hey.
That's not good.
No.
Not supposed to do that.
But there's been a rash of these things.
Yes.
And
well, Trump is talking about rebuilding America's infrastructure.
Well, there's a concern, that there has been an updating of Amtrak's infrastructure already as far as computer systems and automating things. And the question is whether some of these things are being hacked. I mean, we haven't really found out exactly why some of these trains are off.
My experience.
And what is your experience?
With American railroads is that you would have a better experience in a third world country. I could tell stories. My goodness. My family took a train ride one time from Washington, D.C. to Charleston, West Virginia. Growing up in Japan, being in Korea, you think that, train is a good way to travel.
Absolutely.
Was not at all. I mean, it stops someplace. And they give you no information. They just stop, I was just like, come on. Trump referred to S-hole countries, but I'll bet that the S-hole countries have better train service than some of these things that go on on Amtrak. I don't think to hack something, there has to be a certain standard before you can hack it. All right?
Well, that's an issue.
I don't think Amtrak is at that standard where it can be hacked. So I think, and it's tragic because in the 19th century and even into the middle of the 20th century, the American railroads were really in a golden age.
They were.
Yeah.
Well, they're trying to make it a golden age in California with a new bullet train to go from San Francisco to L.A., except it can't really go to San Francisco and can't really go to L.A., but it'll just go back and forth in the desert. But they're spending billions of dollars to make this train line from nowhere to nowhere, and it just becomes a boondoggle, I think, trying to get the people rich that are involved in the construction of it. So anyway. Well, let's not go there.
All right. Apologies to anyone who works at Amtrak. But hey, if you work at Amtrak, you got to know that what I'm saying is true. Virus outbreak at the Olympics, a military deployed. Not sure what those two things have to do with each other.
Well, what happened was the norovirus broke out, which is hugely a problem when you start dealing with food services and a lot of people. And so what happened was the employees were told to go home, and they got military people to come in and start serving food, which I don't necessarily think would improve the situation, but anyway, that was what they did.
1,200 security workers sidelined to drones to patrol games, coldest Olympics in history. Of course, I guess they don't call it the global warming Olympics, do they? How much sex are athletes having? That's an article about all the condoms that are being provided to the athletes. Apparently, in previous Olympics, they've run out.
Oh.
First modern human in UK had blue eyes and black skin. Electric shock to brain boosts memory. LA has world's worst traffic congestion again. Record heat brings mosquito swarms. Monaco running out of space for millionaires. Horror. Suspect chops up victim in restaurant, transports remains in suitcase on train. A man accused of trying to buy a child for $250 and meth. Comedy not pretty, and nowadays it isn't even funny. Sanctimony replaces humor. And ex-Pope Benedict says, this story just came in, says last phase of his life. I guess he's getting old. The late night comic shows are really not comic anymore, are they?
No.
Used to, Johnny Carson, even Jay Leno had a way of sort of going after both parties, but not anymore. Yeah. Sanctimony is replacing comedy. Here in the Wall Street Journal this morning, I found myself seated at my computer last month watching on YouTube the comedian Bill Maher talk about Donald Trump's marriage. If you don't share Mr. Maher's politics, you are likely to find him an odious, even loathsome character, for he doesn't really exist outside politics. His standard tone is mockery, his modus operandi, and to lacerate his targets with obscenities, flash a nervous smile, and then bask in applause from his audience. I was watching Mr. Maher on YouTube to see how far he would go on the subject of the Trump marriage. Would he attack the Trump's 11-year-old son, or perhaps attack the family for not having a dog? No surprise, he brought up the allegations of sexual harassment against Mr. Trump. Stormy Daniels was mentioned. His final punchline was that Melania Trump hadn't accompanied her husband to Davos, Switzerland, because she had spent the day having to, quote, lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown trophy wife, unquote. Donald Trump has been a great boon to late-night talk show hosts. His Baroque hairdo, his hyperbole, his general extravagance, his unabashed egotism, all these things and more are in the wheelhouse of today's liberal comedians. Without him, Bill Maher and Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel and Seth Meyers would be practically out of business. Jon Stewart must wake each morning filled with grief for his wretched timing at retiring, just as Mr. Trump came into office. You had to have taken what I think of as a Trumpian option of their comedy has rendered these comedians charmless while strikingly limiting their audience to those who share their politics. I recently wrote a book on the subject of charm in preparation for which I asked a great many people to name 5 persons in the public life they thought charming. No one could do it. In a political time as divisive as ours, a public figure loses roughly half his following and hence his charm just as soon as he announces his politics. For an entertainer to do so is perhaps even more hazardous. All right, well, that's not the whole article, but a taste of it, and we're at the end of our time this morning. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and pray that this Wednesday will be a good day for you as you go about the work of God, wherever you are and whatever you are doing. Thank you very much to Kyle for coming in this morning, and we wish everyone a good day. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.
Adieu.